The blood-red sun dipped low over the jagged horizon as Rose Harper rode into Shoshone City, Idaho, with nothing but her father's pocket watch and a heart turned to stone by a past she couldn't outrun. The year was 1883, and the promise of a new beginning in this mining boomtown seemed like her last hope after losing everything back east. Rose dismounted her dun mare outside the Frontier Hotel, her bones aching from 3 days in the saddle. The street bustled with the usual frontier chaos: miners with gold fever in their eyes, merchants hawking overpriced goods, and working girls calling from balconies. None of it touched her. She'd learned the hard way that feeling anything at all was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Need help with that bag, miss?" The deep voice came from behind her. Rose turned to find herself face to face with a tall man whose blue eyes crinkled at the corners beneath the brim of a weather-beaten Stetson. His trail-dusted clothes and the well-worn Colt at his hip marked him as a man comfortable with the wilder side of the West. "I can manage," she replied coolly, reaching for her saddlebags. "Suit yourself." He tipped his hat with a half-smile. "Isaac Zimmerman, at your service anyway." She nodded curtly and turned away, but he continued, "Town's not the friendliest place for a woman alone. If you're staying, might want to watch your back." "I've been watching my back since before you knew which end of that gun to hold," she said, her voice flat. Isaac raised an eyebrow. "Fair enough. Just trying to be neighborly." "I'm not looking for neighbors." Rose shouldered her bag and headed toward the hotel entrance, feeling his eyes on her back. She didn't need his warnings. She'd come to Shoshone City because it was growing enough to need a schoolteacher, but remote enough that her past wouldn't follow. 3 years of running had taught her that trust was just another word for vulnerability. The hotel clerk eyed her suspiciously until she placed $3 silver on the counter. "Room for a week," she said, "and information about the school board." "School board meets tomorrow at the church," he replied, pushing a key toward her. "Room 6, top of the stairs." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a window overlooking the main street. Rose unpacked her few belongings: 2 dresses, a pair of worn boots, and a small leather-bound book. From the bottom of her bag, she pulled a folded newspaper clipping advertising for a schoolteacher in Shoshone City. It had been her salvation when the shadows of Chicago had grown too long. She sat on the edge of the bed and unfolded the letters she'd carried with her recommendations from the headmistress at the girls' school where she'd taught in Philadelphia, before everything fell apart. Before David Thornton had destroyed her life with sweet promises and a silver tongue that turned venomous once he had what he wanted. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. "Who is it?" she called, quickly tucking the letters away. "It's Mrs. Peterson, dear. From the boarding house across the way. Heard we had a new lady in town and thought you might appreciate some supper." Rose hesitated before opening the door to find a plump older woman holding a covered tray. "I don't need charity," Rose said automatically. "It's not charity, it's welcome," the woman replied with a smile that crinkled her round face. "Besides, hotel food's terrible and a skinny thing like you needs proper feeding." Despite herself, Rose accepted the tray. "Thank you. You're the teacher, aren't you? Word travels fast." "School board's been waiting months for someone qualified." "I hope to be," Rose admitted. "Well, they'll snatch you up quick as anything. 30 children and not a one of them learning their letters proper." Mrs. Peterson nodded decisively. "You eat up now. Morning comes early in Shoshone." After the door closed, Rose sat at the small table by the window. The stew was hot and rich, the bread freshly baked. She watched the street below as she ate, observing the rhythms of the town. The saloon across the way filled with miners and cowboys, their laughter occasionally rising above the piano music that spilled into the street. She spotted Isaac Zimmerman again, making his way down the boardwalk with the easy confidence of a man who knew his place in the world. He paused to help an elderly man up the steps of the general store, then continued toward the saloon. Rose found herself watching longer than necessary before deliberately turning away. The morning dawned bright and clear. Rose dressed in her best navy skirt and white blouse, pinning her chestnut hair into a tight bun that emphasized the sharp lines of her face. At 25, she was young for a schoolteacher, but her eyes held the weariness of someone much older. The church was a simple white clapboard building at the end of Main Street. Rose arrived early, clutching her references and qualifications. Inside, 4 men and 1 woman sat at a table near the altar, deep in discussion. Miss Harper, a balding man with spectacles, stood as she approached. Reverend Wallace, we're pleased you've come. These are the other school board members, Mayor Collins, Mrs. Abernathy, Mr. Johnson, and Mr. Franklin. Rose shook their hands, her grip firm. I appreciate the opportunity to present my qualifications. The interview was straightforward. Rose answered their questions about her education, teaching experience, and methods of discipline. She carefully omitted any mention of why she'd left Philadelphia or her brief, disastrous time in Chicago. Well, Miss Harper, Reverend Wallace said after 30 minutes, your credentials are impressive. We'd be fortunate to have someone with your background teaching our children. There is the matter of housing, Mayor Collins added. The previous teacher lived in the rooms above the school, but there was an incident with a fire. It's not currently habitable. I can arrange my own accommodations, Rose replied. Actually, Mrs. Abernathy interjected, we've arranged for you to board with the Zimmerman family. They have a ranch just outside town with plenty of room, and Isaac's sister-in-law runs the household since his brother's passing. Rose stiffened. I prefer to make my own arrangements. The salary is $40 a month with room and board at the Zimmerman Ranch, Reverend Wallace said firmly. It's the only suitable arrangement for a young, unmarried lady. We have standards to maintain. Rose's jaw tightened. She needed this position, needed the stability and anonymity it would provide. Very well, she conceded. Excellent, the Reverend beamed. Isaac will escort you out this afternoon. School begins on Monday. Outside the church, Rose took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. This wasn't what she'd planned, but she could manage. She always did. The Zimmerman Ranch would simply be a place to sleep, nothing more. She spent the rest of the morning exploring the town, familiarizing herself with its layout. Shoshone City had grown rapidly in the 5 years since silver was discovered in the nearby mountains. What had once been a tiny trading post was now a bustling town with a telegraph office, 3 saloons, a Chinese laundry, and even a small theater that doubled as a dance hall on Saturday nights. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a solid building with large windows and a bell tower. Rose unlocked it with the key Reverend Wallace had given her and stepped inside. The room was dusty but well-equipped, with rows of desks, a blackboard, and shelves of books. It smelled of chalk and the lemon oil someone had used on the wood. Rose ran her fingers over the teacher's desk, allowing herself a small moment of satisfaction. This was hers now, a place where she could be useful, respected, a place where no one knew her shame. At precisely 2 o'clock, the door opened behind her. Ready to head out, Miss Harper. Isaac Zimmerman stood in the doorway, hat in hand. Rose straightened. I wasn't aware we'd agreed on a time. Reverend Wallace said you'd be here. His eyes took in the room, checking your domain. Preparing for Monday. She gathered her reticule. I assume the ranch is far, about 5 miles west, along the Snake River. He gestured toward the door. My wagon's outside. The wagon was well maintained with a fresh coat of green paint. 2 strong bays stood in harness, tossing their heads impatiently. Isaac helped Rose climb to the seat, his hand steady under her elbow. She ignored the brief warmth of his touch. They traveled in silence for the first mile, the road winding through sagebrush and rocky outcroppings. Isaac handled the team with confidence, his hands strong on the reins. "Lovely country," Rose finally said, if only to break the silence. "It grows on you." Isaac glanced sideways at her. "Not what you're used to back east, I'd imagine." "How do you know I'm from the east?" He smiled slightly. "Your accent. And those boots aren't made for western trails." Rose looked down at her city boots, already scuffed from just one day in Shoshone. "Observant of you. Part of staying alive out here." He guided the wagon around a sharp bend. "So what brings a Philadelphia girl to Idaho territory?" "Most folks head the other direction." Rose stiffened. "I didn't say I was from Philadelphia. Your letters of reference were. Reverend Wallace mentioned it. I prefer not to discuss my past, Mr. Zimmerman." "Fair enough." He fell silent again, but there was no tension in it. After a few more miles, he pointed to a ridge in the distance. "That's Zimmerman land. Been running cattle here for 7 years now." The ranch came into view as they crested a small hill, a sprawling log house with several outbuildings, corrals, and a large barn. Smoke curled from the chimney, and a few hands were visible working with horses in a far paddock. "It's larger than I expected," Rose admitted. "Started with just 10 acres and a shack," Isaac said, pride evident in his voice. "My brother James and I built it up from nothing. After the war, there wasn't much left for us in Tennessee." As they pulled into the yard, a woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 30, with dark hair and Isaac's blue eyes. "That's Hannah, James's widow," Isaac explained quietly. "She runs the house and keeps us all in line." Hannah welcomed Rose with genuine warmth. "We're so pleased you've come. The children need proper schooling, and it'll be nice having another woman around." The house was surprisingly comfortable inside, with polished floors and simple but sturdy furniture. A large stone fireplace dominated the main room, and kerosene lamps cast a warm glow as evening approached. "I've prepared the east room for you," Hannah said, leading Rose upstairs. "It gets the morning sun, which is lovely this time of year." The bedroom was small but pleasant, with a maple bed, dresser, and a rocking chair by the window. A colorful quilt covered the bed, and fresh wildflowers sat in a pottery vase on the windowsill. "It's very nice," Rose said, suddenly aware of how long it had been since she'd had a real home. "Thank you for opening your house to me." Hannah smiled. "Dinner's at 6. The hands eat in the bunkhouse, but Isaac and I take meals here in the house. And of course there's Luke." "Luke, my son. He's 8 and will be one of your pupils. He's out with Isaac's foreman right now, learning to rope." Hannah paused at the door. "You'll find clean water and towels on the dresser. Rest if you like before dinner." Left alone, Rose sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed. The kindness of these strangers was unexpected and unsettling. She'd grown accustomed to keeping people at a distance, to expecting the worst. Now she found herself in a home filled with warmth and life, with people who seemed genuinely good. She unpacked her few belongings, arranging them carefully in the dresser drawers. From the bottom of her bag, she withdrew a small daguerreotype in a tarnished silver frame, her parents on their wedding day, both long dead now from the fever that had swept Philadelphia when Rose was 16. They smiled from behind the glass, frozen in a happiness she could barely remember feeling herself. Dinner was simple but plentiful: roast beef, potatoes, and fresh bread. Luke proved to be a bright, curious boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's quick smile. He peppered Rose with questions about school and books and whether she knew how to shoot a gun. "Luke," Hannah admonished, "Miss Harper is a lady and a teacher." "My pa could shoot, and he was a teacher before the war," Luke countered. Isaac chuckled. "He's got you there, Hannah." "Can you shoot, Miss Harper?" Luke asked eagerly. Rose hesitated. "I can, actually. My father taught me when I was about your age." Isaac raised an eyebrow, and Rose felt a flicker of annoyance at his surprise. There was much about her he didn't know would never know. After dinner, Isaac invited her to see the rest of the ranch before darkness fell. They walked in the golden light of sunset, past the barn where sleek horses watched them curiously from stalls, past the bunkhouse where several cowboys nodded respectfully as they passed. "You've built something impressive here," Rose said honestly. "James had the vision. I just had the stubborn." Isaac's voice held a note of sadness. "He died 3 years ago, thrown from a horse during a thunderstorm. I'm sorry. Hannah and Luke are the heart of this place now." He paused at the corral fence. "And you, any family waiting for your letters?" Rose shook her head. "No one." He studied her face for a moment. "Everyone's got a story out here. Most of us are running from something." "I'm not running," she said automatically. "No." His eyes, kind but perceptive, met hers. "Then what would you call it? Starting over?" He nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Just remember, starting over works better when you're not looking over your shoulder the whole time." The first day of school arrived crisp and clear. Rose had spent the weekend preparing lessons and organizing the schoolroom. Now, as children filed in, some eager, some reluctant, she felt a familiar comfort in the routine of education. She had 32 pupils ranging from 6 to 16 years old. The older boys eyed her suspiciously, clearly wondering if this slender woman could maintain discipline. By midday, she had answered that question by sending the ringleader, a burly 15-year-old named Thomas Miller, to stand in the corner for disrupting her mathematics lesson. "You can join us again when you're ready to learn," she said calmly, continuing the lesson without missing a beat. The rest of the day passed without incident, and Rose felt a small sense of accomplishment as she dismissed the children at 3 o'clock. Luke lingered behind, helping her clean the blackboard. "You're different from our last teacher," he said thoughtfully. "Mr. Jenkins would have used the strap on Tommy Miller." "Violence teaches fear, not knowledge," Rose replied. "Though I'm not above assigning extra arithmetic if behavior doesn't improve," Luke grinned. "Uncle Isaac says you're as prickly as a cactus but probably just as tough inside." Rose felt her cheeks warm. "Your uncle talks too much. He likes you, though." Luke hopped down from the chair he'd been standing on. "He told Hannah you have sad eyes but a fighter spirit." "That's quite enough, Luke," Rose said firmly. "Run along now before your mother worries." As the days turned into weeks, Rose settled into life at the Zimmerman ranch. Each morning, she rode to town with Isaac, who had business at the bank or general store. Each afternoon, she taught until 3, then prepared lessons until Isaac collected her at 5. They rarely spoke during these rides beyond polite conversation about the weather or local news. But Rose found herself watching him when he wasn't looking the way he handled horses with gentle confidence, how the ranch hands respected him without fear, the patience he showed with Luke's endless questions. He was not at all the sort of man she'd known in Philadelphia or Chicago. October brought the Harvest Festival, and the entire town gathered for dancing, food, and celebration. Rose had initially planned to avoid the festivities, but Hannah insisted. "The whole town will be there," she argued, "including your pupils and their parents. It would be noticed if you stayed away." So Rose found herself in the town hall that Saturday evening, wearing her best dress, a deep green wool with modest lace at the collar. She spoke with parents about their children's progress, accepted compliments on her teaching methods, and politely declined several invitations to dance. Not much for dancing. Isaac appeared at her side as she watched couples twirl to a lively fiddle tune. "I'm here as the schoolteacher," she replied. "It wouldn't be appropriate. Seems to me a teacher ought to participate in community traditions." He offered his hand. "Just one dance, for the sake of cultural education." Rose hesitated, then placed her hand in his. "One dance." He led her onto the floor as the music shifted to a slower waltz. His hand at her waist was respectful, maintaining proper distance, but she could feel its warmth through her dress. "You're a good dancer," she observed, surprised. "My mother's influence." She believed a gentleman should know how to dance properly. He guided her smoothly through a turn. "You seem surprised." "I didn't expect a rancher to waltz like he trained in Boston," he smiled. "There's a lot about me you don't know, Miss Harper, and I suppose you think you know all about me." "Not at all." His eyes held hers. "You guard your secrets well, but I know you care about those children more than you let on. I know you send half your salary back east each month, and I know whatever brought you here still haunts you." Rose missed a step. "You've been watching me, observing." "It's how I stay alive out here, remember." The music ended, and Rose stepped back quickly. "Thank you for the dance." She moved away through the crowd, heart pounding. She needed air. Outside, the night was cool and clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. Rose breathed deeply, trying to calm herself. "I've upset you." Isaac's voice came from behind her. "I apologize." She turned. "You've been checking on my personal affairs." "Why?" He leaned against the porch railing. When a woman arrives in town alone, clearly educated, clearly running from something, it raises questions. "So you appointed yourself to investigate?" "No, but I am responsible for Hannah and Luke, and you're living in our home." His voice softened. "Whatever you're running from, Rose, it can't follow you here. You're safe." Something in his tone, in the unexpected use of her given name, broke through her defenses. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Then help me understand." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "I trusted someone once. He was charming, respected, the son of my school's benefactor. He promised marriage, respectability. I believed him." She looked away. "When I refused to accommodate his desires before marriage, he spread vicious lies about me, said I'd tried to seduce him for his money. No one believed me over him. I lost my position, my reputation, everything." Isaac's face hardened. "This man, he's the one you send money to." "No." Rose shook her head vehemently. "Never. The money goes to a girl's home in Chicago. I stayed there briefly after Philadelphia. The woman who runs it helped me when no one else would." "And you've been running ever since." "Moving forward," she corrected. "Building a new life, alone. It's safer that way." Isaac stepped closer. "Is it? Seems a hard way to live." "I don't have the luxury of choices." "Everyone has choices, Rose." His voice was gentle. "Including the choice to trust again." "I can't." She met his eyes directly. "I can't love anyone, Isaac. That part of me is gone." His hand rose slowly, hovering near her cheek but not touching. "Then let me do it for both of us." Rose's breath caught. She stepped back, shaking her head. "Don't say things like that." "I say what I mean." His eyes held her steadily. "I'm not asking for anything from you, just telling you how it is. You don't even know me." "I know enough." He straightened. "I know you're stubborn and proud and braver than most men I've met. I know you treat every child in that school like they matter. And I know whatever happened to you doesn't define who you are." Music and laughter drifted from inside the hall. Rose wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the mild evening. "We should go back inside," she said finally. "People will talk." Isaac nodded, respecting her retreat. "After you." They returned to the dance, but something had shifted between them. Rose found herself acutely aware of his presence across the room as he spoke with ranchers and townsmen. Occasionally, their eyes would meet, and she would quickly look away, unsettled by the warmth that flooded through her. The following weeks brought an early winter to Shoshone City. Snow dusted the mountains by early November, and the mornings dawned frosty and bright. Rose threw herself into teaching, organizing a Thanksgiving pageant and working with the older students on advanced mathematics and literature. At the ranch, she maintained a careful distance from Isaac, taking meals with the family but retreating to her room in the evenings to read or prepare lessons. If he noticed her withdrawal, he didn't mention it, treating her with the same quiet respect he always had. One Saturday morning in mid-November, Rose was working at her desk in the schoolhouse when the door opened, bringing a gust of cold air. "Miss Harper," Mayor Collins stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. "Might I have a word?" "Of course." She set down her pen. "Is there a problem?" The mayor closed the door and removed his hat, twisting it in his hands. "We've received a letter from Philadelphia." Rose's blood ran cold. "I see. It's from a Mr. Thornton, David Thornton." The mayor pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. "He makes some disturbing allegations." Rose's hands trembled slightly as she took the letter. David's elegant script covered the page with poisonous words, descriptions of her as morally compromised, manipulative, warnings about her unseemly pursuit of wealthy patrons. "He claims you were dismissed from the Blackwood Academy for inappropriate behavior," Mayor Collins said stiffly. "He's lying." Rose's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "Mr. Thornton was a patron's son who became insistent in his attentions. When I refused him, he destroyed my reputation." The mayor looked unconvinced. "These are serious allegations, Miss Harper. The school board will need to meet. You would take the word of a man 3,000 miles away over mine after the work I've done here. We have a responsibility to the children. The meeting will be Tuesday after school." He reached for the letter, but Rose held it tightly. "May I keep this? I have a right to know exactly what I'm accused of." After a moment, he nodded reluctantly. "Tuesday at 4 o'clock, Miss Harper." When he left, Rose sat motionless, staring at the letter in her hands. How had David found her? Why couldn't he just let her be? The familiar shame and anger rose within her, but this time there was something else: determination. She would not run again. That afternoon, she rode back to the ranch alone, declining Hannah's offer to send one of the hands to fetch her. She needed time to think, to plan her defense. The school board respected her work, surely that would count for something. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear the riders approaching until they were nearly upon her. 3 men on horseback, none familiar, blocked the road ahead. "Well, look here. The schoolmarm all alone," one called, his voice slurred. "Pretty thing, ain't she?" Rose tightened her grip on the reins. "Gentlemen, I'll thank you to let me pass." "Oh, she's thanking us already," another laughed. He was young, barely 20, with a patchy beard and bloodshot eyes. All 3 smelled of cheap whiskey. "Why don't you thank us proper, teacher lady?" They surrounded her horse, too close. The oldest, a weathered man with a scar across his cheek, reached for her bridle. "I heard you was friendly with the right kind of men," he said, his breath reeking of alcohol. "That true?" Rose yanked her horse back sharply. "Touch me and you'll regret it." "Feisty," the younger one laughed. "I like that." Rose's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm expected at the Zimmerman ranch. If I'm delayed, there will be people looking for me." "Zimmerman," the scarred man spat. "That where you're staying, with that high and mighty cattleman?" "Mr. Zimmerman employs 6 ranch hands and a foreman, all of whom will come looking if I don't arrive soon," Rose said coldly. "Now move aside." The third man, who had been quiet until now, suddenly grabbed her arm. "Get down from that horse, lady. We just want to talk a while." Rose reacted instinctively, the small derringer she kept in her pocket appearing in her hand. "Remove your hand or lose it." The man's eyes widened, but before he could respond, the crack of a rifle shot split the air. All three men wheeled toward the sound. Isaac Zimmerman sat on his black gelding 50 yards away, rifle raised. "The lady asked you to move. I suggest you do it." "This ain't your business, Zimmerman," the scarred man called. "Miss Harper is under my protection. That makes it my business." Isaac's voice was deadly calm. "You boys have 5 seconds before I put a hole in someone." The three exchanged glances, then reluctantly backed their horses away. "Ain't worth dying over some schoolmarm," the younger one muttered. "This ain't finished," the scarred man warned, but they turned their horses and rode away at a gallop. Rose's hands shook as she lowered the derringer. Isaac rode to her side, his face grim. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. They didn't have time. Miller and his boys. Troublemakers from the mining camp north of town. Isaac scanned the horizon. "They've been warned about harassing women before." "How did you know to come?" "Luke said you'd left town alone. Didn't seem wise with early dark coming." His eyes fell to the small pistol still in her hand. "That wouldn't have stopped 3 of them." "It would have stopped at least 1, she replied, returning the weapon to her pocket. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I believe it would have. Let's get you home before they find their courage in another bottle." They rode in silence for several minutes before Rose said, "Thank you." Isaac nodded. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't." She took a deep breath. "I received some troubling news today. The man from Philadelphia, the one who ruined my reputation, he sent a letter to the school board." Isaac's expression darkened. "What does he want? To destroy me again, I suppose." Rose's voice was bitter. "The board is meeting Tuesday to discuss it. I'll speak to them." "My word carries weight here." "No." Rose's response was immediate. "I don't want special treatment because of whatever this is between us. I need to handle this myself." "Rose, please, Isaac, this is my fight." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. But you're not alone in it, whether you want to be or not." That evening, Rose sat at her desk writing a response to the school board. She laid out the facts plainly, her exemplary teaching record, the circumstances of David's advances and her rejection, his subsequent campaign to destroy her. She included a letter from the matron of the girls' home in Chicago, testifying to her character. A knock at her door interrupted her work. "Come in," she called, expecting Hannah with the evening tea she often brought. Instead, Isaac entered holding a small wooden box. "May I?" Rose nodded, setting down her pen. "I'm nearly finished." "Your defense?" He glanced at the papers spread across her desk. "Yes, though I doubt it will matter." "It will." He sat on the edge of the bed, the only other place to sit in the small room. "Shoshone City isn't Philadelphia. People know you here, respect the work you've done with their children." "Perhaps." Rose capped her in quell. "What's in the box?" Isaac opened it, revealing a tarnished silver star. "My brother's. He was sheriff in a small town in Wyoming before we came here." He turned it over in his palm. "He believed in justice. Real justice, not just the kind that favors men with money and power." "He sounds like a good man." "He was." Isaac set the box aside. "The point is, there are good men on that school board too, men who'll listen to the truth." Rose smiled faintly. "You have more faith in human nature than I do." "Not human nature, just the particular humans in question." He leaned forward. "Rose, whatever happens Tuesday, you don't have to face it alone." "I've been alone a long time, Isaac. I've survived." "Surviving isn't the same as living." His eyes held hers. "And you don't have to be alone anymore." The intensity in his gaze made her look away. "I told you before, I can't offer what you want." "You never asked what I want." His voice was gentle. Did it occur to you that maybe all I want is to see you happy, to see you safe? No one does anything without expecting something in return. That's not how the world works. It's how my world works. He stood. Get some rest, Rose. Tuesday will be here soon enough. After he left, Rose sat motionless, staring at the door. His words echoed in her mind, then let me do it for both of us. What would it be like to trust again? To believe someone could care without ulterior motives? The thought terrified her almost as much as it tempted her. Tuesday arrived with a bitter wind and gray skies that matched Rose's mood. She taught her classes with determined normalcy, refusing to let her anxiety show. At 4 o'clock, she dismissed the children and prepared to face the school board. To her surprise, the small church was nearly full when she arrived. Parents, townspeople, even several of her older students sat in the pews behind the table where the school board members were gathering. Reverend Wallace looked uncomfortable as he called the meeting to order. "We're here to address concerns raised about Miss Harper's character and fitness to teach," he began. "A letter received from Philadelphia contains serious allegations." Mayor Collins read the letter aloud, and Rose held her head high as the whispers rippled through the room. When he finished, Reverend Wallace turned to her. "Miss Harper, do you wish to respond to these allegations?" "I do." Rose stood, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "Everything in that letter is a lie crafted by a man who couldn't accept rejection. I have written testimony from the matron of St. Catherine's home in Chicago, where I stayed after leaving Philadelphia, attesting to my character." She handed the letter to Reverend Wallace, who read it silently before passing it to the other board members. "While the matron's word is compelling," Mayor Collins said, "we have only your word against Mr. Thornton's regarding the original incident." "That's not entirely true," a new voice spoke from the back of the church. All heads turned as Isaac Zimmerman walked down the aisle, a telegram in his hand. "Mr. Zimmerman, this is a closed proceeding," the mayor protested. "I believe this is relevant." Isaac handed the telegram to Reverend Wallace. "I took the liberty of wiring an acquaintance in Philadelphia, a former business partner who moves in those social circles. His response arrived this morning." Reverend Wallace adjusted his spectacles and read aloud. "David Thornton, reputation questionable, stopped. 2 other female teachers left Blackwood under similar circumstances. Stop currently engaged in lawsuit with family of young woman. Stop exercise caution in dealing. Stop." A murmur ran through the crowd. Rose stared at Isaac in disbelief. "Additionally," Isaac continued, "I've spoken with Judge Parker, who received a response to his inquiry from the Philadelphia police. It seems Mr. Thornton has a pattern of pursuing young women in vulnerable positions, then retaliating when rejected." "Why would you involve yourself in this matter, Mr. Zimmerman?" Mrs. Abernathy asked shrewdly. "Because Miss Harper is being judged unfairly, based on the word of a man none of you have met, while ignoring the excellent work she's done here." Isaac's gaze swept the room. "Is that the kind of justice we want in Shoshone City?" "He makes a fair point," Reverend Wallace conceded. "Miss Harper has been an exemplary teacher." From the pews, parents began to speak up, praising Rose's teaching methods, noting their children's progress, defending her character based on their own observations. Even Thomas Miller, the boy she disciplined that first day, stood to say she was strict but fair. Rose felt tears prickling behind her eyes as person after person rose to support her. These people who barely knew her were fighting for her when no one in Philadelphia had. After nearly an hour of testimony, the school board withdrew to deliberate. Rose sat alone in the front pew, acutely aware of Isaac's presence several rows behind her. She didn't look back, afraid of what her face might reveal. When the board returned, Reverend Wallace cleared his throat. The board has reached a unanimous decision. We find no cause to question Miss Harper's character or fitness to teach. The allegations from Philadelphia are dismissed, and Miss Harper is confirmed in her position with our full confidence." A cheer went up from the assembled townspeople. Rose closed her eyes briefly, relief washing over her in a dizzying wave. Outside, as people dispersed into the snowy evening, Isaac waited by the church steps. "Thank you," Rose said quietly. "Though you shouldn't have interfered." "I didn't interfere. I simply ensured all the facts were available." His eyes searched hers. "Are you angry?" "No." She shook her head slowly. "Confused, perhaps. Why would you go to such lengths for me?" "I think you know why." His voice was soft. "The question is whether you're brave enough to believe it." Snow began to fall, large flakes drifting in the yellow light from the church windows. Rose looked up at the sky, then back at Isaac. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "How to trust, how to feel anything without being afraid. One day at a time." He offered his arm. "Starting with dinner at the hotel. The whole town's talking anyway, might as well give them something real to talk about." A small smile tugged at her lips. "You're impossible." "Determined," he corrected. "And patient, very patient." The winter passed in a slow thaw, not just of the snow that blanketed Shoshone City, but of the ice around Rose's heart. She remained at the Zimmerman ranch, teaching by day and gradually allowing herself to become part of the family in the evenings. She helped Hannah with preserves, read stories to Luke by the fire, and slowly, cautiously, began to let Isaac closer. Their courtship, if it could be called that, progressed with deliberate care. Isaac never pushed, never demanded, simply offered his presence, his support, his quiet certainty that she was worth waiting for. They rode together on Saturdays, explored the snow-covered mountains, talked for hours about books and ideas and dreams. By spring, when the first crocuses pushed through the melting snow, Rose realized something had changed within her. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. The wounds were healing. One warm April evening, she sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. Isaac joined her, handing her a cup of coffee. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, settling beside her. "I was thinking about David's letter," she replied. "How something meant to destroy me ended up giving me something I never expected." "And what's that?" "A home, people who stood by me." She turned to face him. "You." Isaac's eyes softened. "I'd stand by you through worse than that, Rose Harper. I know." She took a deep breath. "I've been afraid for so long, afraid to trust, to hope, to love, but I'm not afraid anymore." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "What changed? You did." She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "You loved me when I couldn't love myself. When I said I couldn't love, you said you'd do it for both of us, and somehow, that's exactly what happened." Isaac's free hand rose to cup her cheek. "Rose, I love you, Isaac Zimmerman." The words, so long unspoken, felt like freedom. "I don't know when it happened or how you broke through every wall I built, but you did." His kiss was gentle, reverent, a promise made without words. When they parted, his smile was brighter than the setting sun. "About time you figured it out," he murmured. "I've only been waiting 6 months." Rose laughed, the sound strange and wonderful to her own ears. "Patience is a virtue, Mr. Zimmerman. So they say." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box. "I've been carrying this for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment." Inside was a ring, a simple gold band set with a perfect pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It was my mother's," he said softly. "Rose Harper, will you marry me?" The answer came without hesitation, without fear. "Yes." They were married in the church on a perfect June day, with wildflowers decorating the altar and the entire town in attendance. Luke stood proudly as ring bearer, and Hannah wept happy tears as she adjusted Rose's veil, her own, preserved for 20 years. After the ceremony, as they greeted well-wishers in the churchyard, Rose spotted a familiar face, Mrs. Peterson, who had brought her supper that first night at the hotel. "I knew at the moment I saw him looking at you on Main Street," the older woman declared, patting Rose's hand. "Some things are just meant to be, dear." As summer turned to fall, Rose continued teaching, now riding to town each morning with her husband. The schoolhouse was repaired, with new rooms above for another teacher who came to assist with the growing number of students. Rose and Isaac lived at the ranch. In a wing Hannah insisted on adding to give the newlyweds privacy. In November, 1 year after David Thornton's letter had arrived, another letter came, this one from Chicago. The matron of St. Catherine's home wrote to thank Rose for her continued support and to share news. David Thornton had finally faced consequences for his actions. After multiple accusations from different women, his family had cut him off, and he'd left Philadelphia in disgrace. "Justice comes eventually," Isaac said as Rose read him the letter. "Not always," she replied. "I was lucky. Many women aren't. Then we make sure Luke grows up to be a man who stands for what's right." He pulled her close. "And we teach our children to do the same." Rose's hand drifted to her abdomen, where the first signs of their child had begun to show. "Do you think we're ready for a baby, Zimmerman?" Isaac grinned. "The world may never be ready for that," she laughed, leaning against his chest. "I never thought I'd have this. A husband, a home, a family on the way. After everything that happened, I was so certain that part of my life was over. I told you I'd do the loving for both of us until you were ready." Isaac kissed the top of her head. "I just didn't expect you to catch up quite so enthusiastically." Rose playfully swatted his arm. "You're impossible, and you love me anyway." "I do." She turned in his arms to face him. "More than I ever thought possible." Outside their window, snow began to fall on Shoshone City, the same snow that had fallen the night she'd first allowed herself to believe in Isaac, in possibility, in a future without fear. But now, wrapped in his arms with their child growing between them, the snow didn't seem cold at all. It seemed like a blank page, ready for their story to continue. Spring brought their daughter, Eleanor Grace Zimmerman, born during an April thunderstorm that rattled the windows of the ranch house. She had her father's blue eyes and her mother's determined spirit, evident from her first lusty cry. "She's perfect," Isaac whispered, holding his daughter with hands that trembled slightly. "Absolutely perfect." "Of course she is," Rose said, exhausted but radiant. "She's ours." The years passed in the sweet rhythm of family life. Eleanor, called Ellie by everyone, except her teacher mother, grew into a spirited, intelligent child who loved books as much as she loved riding with her father. Luke became her devoted protector, teaching her to fish in the Snake River and build forts in the barn hay. 3 years after Ellie's birth, Rose gave birth to twins James Isaac and William Henry, who brought chaos and joy in equal measure to the Zimmerman household. Hannah declared them twice the trouble and twice the blessing, and spoiled them shamelessly. Rose continued teaching until the twins were born, then reluctantly stepped back to focus on her growing family. She didn't abandon education entirely. However, she started a lending library in town, taught reading classes for adults in the evenings, and worked with Hannah to establish a proper school for the growing community of ranch children too far from town to attend regularly. The Zimmerman Ranch prospered under Isaac's careful management. By 1890, it was one of the largest operations in the territory, employing dozens of hands and setting the standard for responsible land stewardship. Isaac was offered political positions several times but always declined, preferring to make his difference closer to home. Rose never forgot her past, but it no longer defined her. On Ellie's 8th birthday, she took her daughter to Chicago to visit the saint. Catherine's home, now expanded and thriving with the support that Rose had faithfully continued to provide. Seeing the girls there so much like she had once been, seeking safety and a second chance, Rose felt the circle of her life completing itself. "Why are you crying, Mama?" Ellie asked as they left the home. "Because sometimes life gives you exactly what you need, even when you're convinced you don't deserve it," Rose answered, smoothing her daughter's dark curls. "Like how you didn't think you deserved Daddy?" Ellie asked with the innocent perception of childhood. Rose smiled through her tears. "Who told you that story? Daddy tells it all the time. He says you said you couldn't love, and he said he'd love enough for both of you." Ellie skipped ahead, then turned back. "And then you decided you could love after all, and now you love so much it spills over and makes our whole family glow." "Is that what he says?" Rose laughed. "Mm. And Uncle Luke says Daddy was like a lost puppy following you around until you finally took pity on him." "Your Uncle Luke has a vivid imagination," Rose said dryly. When they returned to Idaho, Isaac met them at the train station with the twins, now 3 years old and bursting with energy. As he swept Ellie up in one arm and kissed Rose with a passion that still made her blush in public, she knew with absolute certainty that this man, these children, this life was where she was always meant to be. That night, with the children asleep and the ranch quiet under a canopy of stars, Rose and Isaac sat on the porch swing that had witnessed so many moments of their journey together. "I got a letter from the territorial governor today," Isaac said, his arm around her shoulders. "They're pushing for statehood within the year." "Idaho as a state," Rose mused. "Things change so quickly." "Some things don't change." He tilted her face up to his. "Like how much I love you, that's only grown stronger. Even with 3 children underfoot and a wife who still can't make a decent biscuit to save her life. Especially then," he chuckled. "Though I do appreciate Hannah's continued culinary interventions." Rose rested her head on his shoulder, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling for the night. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come to Shoshone City, if we'd never met?" "No." His answer was immediate and certain. "Some things are meant to be, Rose. You and me, we were written in the stars long before we knew it." "The romantic rancher," she teased. "Who would have guessed? Only you." He kissed her forehead. "Always only you." As they rocked gently in the cool evening air, Rose thought about the frightened woman who had arrived in Shoshone City 7 years earlier, determined never to love again. How wrong she had been. How grateful she was for that mistake. "I love you, Isaac Zimmerman," she whispered, the words now as natural as breathing. "With all that I am. I know." His smile held all the certainty that had first drawn her to him, all the patience that had won her heart. "I always knew you would." In the years that followed, as Idaho became a state, and the frontier slowly transformed into settled communities, the Zimmermans remained a cornerstone of Shoshone City. They weathered droughts and economic downturns, celebrated marriages and births, mourned losses, and marked the passage of time with the resilience of people who knew the value of what they had built together. When their children grew and had families of their own, the ranch expanded to accommodate new generations. Ellie became a teacher like her mother. The twins took over different aspects of the ranch operation, and Luke, no longer a boy but a respected doctor, established the first proper hospital in the county. And through it all, Rose and Isaac remained each other's truest companions, their love deepening with each passing year. The woman who once believed she couldn't love, and the man who offered to do it for both of them, had created something far greater than either could have imagined alone, a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone, a story that would be told for generations to come. A story that began with a simple truth that sometimes, when we're most convinced our hearts are broken beyond repair, they're simply waiting for the right hands to hold the pieces together until we remember how to do it ourselves.